So welcome back to part 2 of my Azurestack Kickstarter. Once the images have been created, you see the output here of the command. I disabled all the verbosing in my version, so I created a new Azurestack image uploader that is not set much verbose as the normal Azurestack tools. If we go to the admin portal, and that's one thing of my Azurestack tools, you right now have an icon on your desktop for the admin portal. I'm going to open this one with Google Chrome, and I'm opening the other one later on the management portal, user portal with Internet Explorer on that node in order to stay logged in the system. So I'm logging on with my mass admin. Soft.com and my password, and Google is going to store that for me, so I'm staying logged in. I don't want to translate. Okay, so if we go to our compute, we will see that we have 2 VM images right now generated in the system, and it's Windows Microsoft Server Data Center and Data Center's core, and as I said, they will have the version number of the patch update included, as well as the date, so you can identify this by the version. So whenever you want to pick the latest, it will take the highest version number, which is this one, and all ARM deployments will take that version number. Going forward to ARM deployments, right now that we have finished the deployment of base VM images, we can start to deploy our first system, which will be the SQL Server that we are going to use for the app services. So for that, if we go to admin, there's a script called 20 deploy SQL host. It has some parameters like the SQL host name, admin password, admin username. If you don't specify them, they're taken automatically from the Bootstrap JSON and the values that have been stored in that PowerShell session. So I can just run deploy SQL and it kicks in. Now, this will take a while. I'm checking up front if we have the Windows Server version that's required in order to produce it. If we don't have that version, I will fire up a message telling that there's no SQL, that there's no Windows image currently deployed. I'm starting a new PowerShell session now because this takes a while, again, as administrator. And I will fire up the same script, the same deployment for MySQL, because we also need a MySQL host to run app services later on, especially if we want to do some WordPress stuff or other things. cd $home / Azurestack Kickstart. And from there I can run, it's 25 admin. First, we need to have a bootstrap. I'm showing you what happens if we don't have bootstrapped. If I start 25, deploy MySQL host, it will tell you that it did not find a marketplace image, that it hasn't bootstrapped and all that stuff. So we just need to run the bootstrap. And right now it will again ask me for the credentials in that session. So I need to specify the credentials for my service admin. So talking typing is 1208. And I have to specify the credentials for the cloud admin. So now this is bootstrapped. I have all the settings. Again, it's some part of the global variables that I have, like ARM endpoint is one of them, not args, ARM endpoint. or like Azurestack tools location or Azurestack location, whatever you want to have. RM environment. So all those are like variables that I have stored right now. So now I can run the MySQL script, which has the same step. Like I can specify the host name, admin username, admin password. If not, it takes the defaults from my environment. So it's again checking if I have the required Windows version up and running. It's there, so it's starting the deployment for the resource group MySQL host. Now, those deployments essentially will take up to an hour. So I will get back to you once those systems are deployed. Um, before we before I pause, just let's have a look at the resource groups that are already created. You see here my plans and offers that I have created earlier. Resource group for MySQL host is created, and within there you can see the deployments. This deployment is currently deploying, so there's a deployment running, and we can check this later on um, until this is finished. So right now that the deployment of the MySQL host has succeeded, we can continue with the deployment of the resource provider VM. If we check for Windows, for the SQL Server, that has been finished as well. So we will start both deployments immediately. So for SQL, it's the 21. It's coming right after the 20. Again, here we can specify the SQLRP password, the certificate password, the SQLRP admin. If not, we're using the default passwords and usernames that are coming from our JSON template. Doing the same here for the MySQL host, and it follows essentially the same principles. So MySQL RP password, the certificate password, the host name, whatever it is. So we start both scripts. It starts with downloading the corresponding version of the resource provider, which is dependent on your Azurestack version. Once this is done, it will start the setup of the VM, and you can see here little basic settings that we have: VM name, VM time zone. This is coming from the resource template for the MySQL Server standalone. And I'm currently using it from my GitHub because I modified some items in it. And you will have later on uh, possibilities to set like the time zones and the VM size and all that stuff. This will be part of one of the next versions of my Kickstart items of my Kickstarter, which should be out in like a couple of days. So after a while, the deployment of the MySQL and SQL providers have been finished. We now must refresh the admin portal and create a SKU for MySQL and a SKU for SQL 2014 in order to use them later on. So what we do right now is if we look at our admin portal, currently don't have SQL and MySQL services, so we need to refresh it. We can do it here. Takes a few moments. And if we go to more services, we will see we have the MySQL adapter here, and the SQL adapter will pop up pretty soon. We go to SKUs and add a new one, and we name it like the MySQL SKU 57, and it's MySQL Server, and it's a standalone. This queue name will be later on be picked up when we create the hosting server. It may take up to an hour before the adapters show up. So in my configurations, normally it did not took longer than a few minutes or seconds. Now we go to the SQL adapter. We do the same one here. If we go back to our script output, I mentioned we should create SQL 2014 as this queue because we are using this queue later on for the hosting server. If you want to create other names, that's fine as well. So new queue 2014, SQL 2014, and it's a standalone, and it's the Enterprise Edition. We click on create, and we can also create a default quota. Let's create a quota default, which has 20 databases and 22 terabytes in databases and 20 databases. Great. So we could also do the same one for MySQL. So if we favorite this one, we will have it on our taskbar, so it's easier to click on. And here we create a quota for MySQL. Default and maximum number of databases is 20. So we have that done right now, and we can close out here. So back on track. Now it's time for 23. Sorry, 22, which is deploy SQL provider hosting server. We can specify the SQL host if you use another one, the RP password, the resource group, the SKU name. Again, if you use my defaults, everything's pretty easy. Same here. And it's 27-ish. Deploy MySQL hosting server. So once this is done, we are ready to go and create databases using database as a server from the portal. So let's refresh it here again. And this is the point where you sometimes need to log out the portal. Go back into the admin portal. Use Chrome for it. And we can click on a new data storage, and then we can select a SQL or MySQL database. So let's a SQL database. So we can select correlation, the size that we want to have, the SKU, because here we need to select the SKU, and then we can go out and create this one. Okay, so now this is done. We are finished with the step 2. The next video is about how to deploy the app service.